James Walker. What would you like to talk about now?
We'll talk about the joining of the USS Los Angeles in San Pedro and going to China and some of our activities there. Once we decommissioned the old USS Cincinnati in Brooklyn Navy Yard, I got on a plane, flew down, and joined the USS Los Angeles. The Los Angeles, as I mentioned earlier, had also been in Guantanamo Bay at the same time the Cincinnati was. And I was somewhat familiar with the Los Angeles already, in that they had been commissioned earlier in the Philadelphia Navy Yard, and I had been there to see it, the commissioning ceremonies, because I had an old buddy from Ventura County, friend of the family, on that ship. And he'd been assigned to that after he got his tail wet in the Pacific when he was stuck on one of the baby laptop baby aircraft out there.
How many crew would be on the Los Angeles?
Los Angeles had a crew of nearly 2,000.
Wow.
And they're big ships. And there was the latest thing there was too in the technology at that time. They had manned it with an all-star crew with lots of experience from previous times. When we went on shakedown cruise, doing our trial runs, they got virtually every test was E for excellence. It was a great ship at that time. Then we had just about completed that. We'd been out. We shot up all the back islands of the Santa Barbara Islands on target training and so on. And then the word come down. The Russians had invaded in force Manchuria, totally unannounced, surprise move. The war was already presumably over, and they just went down and made a last-minute grab of land that the Japanese had taken from them in the Russo-Japanese War earlier, a number of years earlier. So the Los Angeles was just coming into service, so we got the word, go to China. And so we took off. And I'll never forget it. The first night out, while we were finishing up getting the ship ready, I was also doing training. They had all the cruisers forces had a training program for engineering officers, which included identifying and understanding all of the engineering systems in the ship. And we had written things to fill out weekly. It was reviewed by the chief engineer and the captain. And if I didn't have it done on time, I was restricted to the ship until it was. But anyhow, I was only about halfway through that when we took off for China. And we just cleared the breakwaters of San Francisco Bay, or Los Angeles harbors, and we're into the big rollers and on our way. And chief engineer called a meeting of his department officers and said, "Walker, you got the watch." I had never stood as top watch before in the engineering room, but I had the training. I had spent years at GE and in New York Chip and operation and construction of those things, so I knew something about them. And I had my training program behind me, pretty much for that phase of the thing. But I nearly dropped dead when I suddenly had the responsibility, actually underway, of yeah. This was 1945, December, and it is kind of rough in the Pacific at that time. As soon as you clear the mainland, you get into the big Pacific rollers.
Would it have been 45 or 44?
45. The war was basically over.
Oh, okay. Well, then the atomic bombs had already been dropped?
Atomic bombs have been dropped.
Wow.
Japan is surrendered. They were making the plans for the meeting on the Missouri to sign all the peace treaties.
Oh, wow.
And then the Russians came up with this big invasion in force. They were not fooling. They took back all the territory that Japan had taken from them in this Sino-Russian War of Japanese-Russian War, which occurred shortly after World War I. So this was a big deal. It was totally unknown what was going to happen, whether this was the beginning of World War III or what. But Los Angeles was going out and defend the free world, I guess. And so we didn't even know where we were going at the time, except China. Anyhow, standing first watch was a real terror. The watch officer has a kind of a booth in which he stands, and it has mounted on walls all of these major systems with movable valves and things, so he knows where they are, and if he wants to change one, he knows what he has to do, and communicate it. He's got a communication system for dealing with all the engineering spaces, and he's in contact with the bridge, of course, for speed and direction and all that kind of stuff. I sat there the whole time reviewing one after another. If I have a high water failure in the boilers, I got to do this. If this kind of thing happens with this, so if I need to split the system, I got to do this. And I just went over and over and over, just in case something happened on my watch. Well, mercifully, nothing did. And it was a very normal watch, and I turned it over at the end of my 4 hours to the next guy, and went back and collapsed, I think, in bed probably.
So the next guy went through similar terror.
Well, they were all pretty experienced guys, other than me. So, but the old Pacific was really stormy, and it was just rough for 30 days. It took us to cross. Everybody gets seasick the first night or two, and I was no exception. Boy, I remember standing and watch with the old bucket between my legs there, and so otherwise things then progressed. Going across, Christmas Day came incidentally, and in the middle of it we crossed the international date line, and it became suddenly the 26th, and the second half of Christmas Day got wiped out. However, mercifully the captain kept on holiday routine for the whole day. As we neared Asia, we passed some baby flat tops coming back the other way. We wished them a Happy New Year. And they said, "Happy hell, we've been rolling so far we bent the flight decks," and as they dipped into the oceans. And so it was a rough time, I'll tell you, for all concerned going across.